Hello everybody. Today I want to show you how you can create validators so you can enforce the rules or best practices in your project that you want every asset to follow. So I have created here a couple of different assets that one of them meets all the conditions that I set up and the others have some settings not set up the way I want, or at least for this example. So let's try to open this asset, click the save button, and you can see there is no problem. And if I open another asset and if I click the save button, I now have a warning that this asset has complex collision as simple setup and I need to check if it's needed. Let's clear this error and let's open another of the assets that I prepared. And for this one, I have the same warning, but I also have an error that the asset name should start with SM underscore. So I have a naming convention that needs to be met. And if I browse to this asset, you'll see that I have the SM, but the M is lowercase, and this doesn't meet my conditions. So I can do the same for this asset. If I try to save it, my output log will tell me that the asset name should start with SM underscore, and as you can see here in the name, it doesn't start with that. So I'll show you a couple of examples of what you can verify with this kind of validator and how to create it. So to start creating this type of validator, you need to right click in your content browser, then choose editor utility and create an editor utility blueprint. So search for validator and create UEditorValidatorBase type. Let's select it and let's go with BP underscore validator underscore tutorial. And let's open this blueprint. And the first thing that you need to do is to override the function CanValidateAsset. So this function will tell the validator if it can run the validation on the asset or not. So for example, let's try by checking if this object is a static mesh, for example. So let's try with a is a soft node. So if it is a static mesh, so here into the soft class, choose static mesh. If it is a static mesh, let's return true. And if it's not a static mesh, let's return false. So we cannot validate assets that are not static meshes with this validator that we are currently creating. And into the class defaults of the validator, make sure that the is enable is set to true. And I would also set only print custom message set to true as well. So it doesn't really fill your walk with messages that it's just checking. So let's compile and save this. And now let's override the ValidateLoadedAsset function. So first, let's try it like this. Let's set up an asset fails. So let's connect and return invalid. So for the asset that we are validating, we are telling the validation that it will fail, and we are setting the status of this asset to invalid. And in the message, let's make literal text and let the text be asset validation fails, exclamation mark. So let's compile and save. And now let's open any static mesh asset that we want to validate, like this one. And let's click the save button. So now let's clear everything and do it again. So you can see the message walk is telling you that this asset asset validation fails, this message that we set up. So this asset is being validated and it doesn't pass the validation. So in that case, immediately you or your team artist that is trying to save this asset needs to fix the problem with this mesh. And the other type, except saving to check these validations, is to right click, go to asset actions and run validate asset. So this will run the validation of the asset and it will give you the same asset validation fails data. So let's clear everything. And now let's go back to our validator that we were creating and set up a more meaningful logic, not just always returning invalid. So for example, first we want to start by checking that if this asset is an engine asset, because we don't want to modify the engine assets and run validation and make our artist change some properties on the engine assets. So let's first start with a sequence node. So we'll run a couple of checks one after each other. So create a sequence node, and the first check will check if our asset path name starts with engine. So our in asset, let's get object path string, and let's check if this string starts with, and let's check for the text slash engine slash, and let's make it case sensitive, so it's matching the folder structure of Unreal Engine. So if this is true, so drag out of the return value, click B to make a branch. So if this is true, we want to set up a pass result for our validator, so asset passes, and the in asset will be our in asset right here. And to not drag through the whole graph, let's just right click and search for get in asset, and it will be at the end here in the variables, because every input in Unreal Engine functions is also a local variable automatically, so it will create this in asset variable for you. After we make our validation pass, let's return node. So we stop validating the process and let's set it to not validated or valid. Any of the two will work, just don't set it as invalid because these are engine assets and we don't want to modify them. So I'll set it to not validated for now. And the next change will be, for example, if our asset is with the proper naming structure. So for example, let's get our object name. Let's check if it starts with, and let's make it sm underscore. And just to be sure that we are running our validator only on static meshes, let's first cast to static mesh before our sequence. So if we continue to the sequence, we are sure that our object is a static mesh. If we fail, let's set up the same validation as if this is an engine asset. So I'll copy everything right here and connect it to the fail state. So let's continue with our validation for the naming of the static mesh. So if our object is a static mesh, we want the prefix sm underscore and we want to be case sensitive. So we want the sm to be capital letters. So again, create a branch. And if this is false, then we want again to, this time we will not be passing our validation. So this time will be asset fails. And we'll set up the return to invalid. like this. But if it doesn't fail, so our naming convention is right, we'll continue to the next check. So the next check will be, for example, our warning for the collision. But for now, let's do just a return node of asset passes. If both our checks are passing properly, we'll set our asset to valid. And let's compile and save this. I have an error. Yeah, here I need to provide a message. So make literal text again. And the message will be asset name should start with sm underscore. And let's put some quotes around it like this. Compile and save. And let's try it right now. So let's browse to this asset. We can see that the asset name starts with this sm underscore, and it's also not in an engine folder. So I expect this validation to pass. So if I hit save, I get an error. So it seems that we have some problem in our blueprint. Let's check what's the problem. So asset validation fails. These are the old messages. The new one is this one. Ensure condition failed. So we are calling asset passes after some errors were reported. So validation result is invalid. Let's go into our validator and check the result. So if it's an engine asset, we'll set it to passes and to not validated. If our name is not starting with SM, asset will fail. And if it's starting, it will be valid. Well, yeah, here's the problem that we left the test message that we had earlier, that the asset validation fails. And then we are setting different statuses after. So let's delete that. And let's compile and save and try our validation again. So let's save this asset, and yeah, no problem. And I'll delete, or not delete, but I'll disable my other validator. So let's disable our old validator, so we are sure that we are not checking twice our conditions that I'm showing you how to create. So let's open back our validator and let's set up the next condition. So here, before we go to the final valid message, let's move this to the last pin that we add additionally. And for the second one, let's check if our asset has the complex as simple collision setting setup. So to do that, you need to access the get editor subsystem, and the editor subsystem that we need should be the static mesh. So get static mesh editor subsystem, and here we need to get collision complexity, and the static mesh should be the in asset that we cast to a static mesh type. So let's connect it. And for this static mesh collision complexity, let's check if it's equal. So equal to an enum value, and the enum value should be use complex as simple. So if it's set up to this setting, let's create a branch again, drag out of this boolean, click B to create a branch, connect it to our sequence. So if it's set to this message, let's create an asset warning, and the warning message will be literal text. So make literal text and check collision settings : use complex as simple is setup. Is it really needed? Question mark. So it's a long message, but so the in asset again will get in asset and scroll down. It's at the end into the variables, and we'll continue our check. And let's say the next check will be if our asset is over some threshold of number of verticals, and if it's over, we need to make it require a Nanite setting to be enabled. For example, if it's over 5,000 verticals, let's say we want to be Nanite asset. So let's create this check again. So create a branch, and this branch should check if our static mesh get number of verticals. So the number of verticals, if it's lower than 5,000, let's connect that. And if it's lower than 5,000, we'll just continue through our sequence node. If it's not lower, so this means it's higher than 5,000, we'll then check if the Nanite settings is being set up. So drag out again from our static mesh and get editor property. And our editor property that we want to check is Nanite setting, and we'll break this Nanite mesh Nanite setting. And if it's enabled, so drag out of the enabled, click B key to create a branch. So if it's enabled, it is fine, but if it's not enabled, so when it's false, we want again to fail our asset check. Let's copy this pattern right here. We want to fail our asset check and set the message to asset is over 5,000 verts, but not set up as Nanite. We'll fail the asset and will return invalid. But if everything passes, it will continue down to our last sequence node right here, and it will set it up as valid. So let's compile and save this validator, and let's try it in our level. So this first asset, if I browse to it and click save, there is no problem with our validation. For the second asset, let's browse to it, open it, and click save right now. And I immediately get a warning. Check collision settings, use complex as simple is set up, is it really needed? So if I check this asset collision mesh, so let's see the simple collision. So I can see that I have a proper simple collision setup right here. So I have 5 cubes, which are really good collision shape for this object. So I don't need this collision to be set up to use the complex one instead of the simple one. So let's go to collision complexity and change it to a project default. So if I save it right now, there is no more error. So let's change this material here that's showing us if it's passing our validation to this green one. So now let's continue with the next object. So if I open it in the editor, if I hit save, I get an error that the name should start with SM. Let's clear everything. Let's browse to this asset. And you can see the name of the asset doesn't start with SM. Let's fix that. SM. And right now, I can see that it's telling me that there is no such setting. So I misspelled something probably into my validator. So here, when I check for Nanite setting, it needs to be Nanite settings with an S at the end. So it's plural. Let's save this and let's now try again. Let's save this object. And right now it's telling me that the asset is over 5000 verticals, but not set up as Nanite. So let's enable Nanite. Let's apply the changes. And if I save it now, I have a warning for my collision settings. So let's see our simple collision. So our simple collision is just this cube. So if I don't use the complex collision, I'll have problems. And if you don't understand these collision problems, you can watch the last tutorial I created. I'm explaining everything. But for now, to fix this problem the fastest, let's create a convex decomposition for this object. So it will create an automatic shape for our simple collision. And this shape should work fine for this object. So now we don't need this collision complexity to be set up to use the complex collision. We'll go back to the simple collision. Let's save. And now no errors from our validator. Let's again change the material so we know that we fixed that as well. And now the last one is this. Let's browse to the asset. Let's open it. And let's try to save it. I have an error that the name should start with SM. Let's add SM in front of the SM underscore in front of the name. And let's save now this asset, and everything seems to be working fine. We don't have this error anymore. So this is how you can validate your assets, and inside your validator you can add any check that you want and any message that you think it will be relevant for this check. So you don't get problems in the future and you're trying to debug something in order to find this issue when you can automatically check it by this validator at every save on your specific asset. So guys, hope you like this tutorial. If you do, please like the video, subscribe for the channel, and if you want to watch these videos earlier than anybody else, a week earlier, you can join the channel into the higher levels. And I want to specifically thank to the highest level of members of the channel sponsors. You allow me to continue to do this free tutorials for everyone else here at YouTube. So guys, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.